what's up? What's up? It's your man F from Jackson, your licensed financial coach and your guide to kingdom wealth building. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Wealth Exchange, where we are exchanging ideas, exchanging information, all with one goal: to help you grow your wealth and increase in your faith. On this episode, we are talking real estate again. Yes, I heard you. I listened. On the last episode, I had a friend of mine come in and we talked about real estate and chopped it up. And you're like, man, we need to keep going and talk about this. So I reached out to a boss lady. She is just a powerhouse in the real estate area. Went to high school with her. She has an amazing story. I'm going to ask her to come in and share some nuggets with us, how she got into real estate, got out during the crash, got back in. It's just good stuff. You're going to like this. And she don't know it yet. She don't know it, but she coming back. So we just gonna make that work. We're gonna make that happen. So I am pleased to welcome here to the podcast with me, Kimberly Land. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
I am honored for you to be here. Thank you for jumping in with me and just educating the folks a little bit more about real estate, about what you do, what you've done, and a little bit about your experience. So this is awesome.
No problem. It's actually my pleasure and my joy. I am having so much fun teaching people about real estate. It's such a boring topic, but I love it. I really enjoy it. I love it.
You know what? That's how I always tell people how you can identify a good person to rock with, especially when it comes to information. If they have a heart of a teacher and a heart of a servant, boom, then that's who you should rock with. So let's jump on in, man. So let's talk a little bit about your journey into real estate. You're up to about 12 doors. For the folks listening, if you hear 12 doors, just think, units and where people are located in. So tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get into real estate? And I need to hear more about this crash thing and what happened there, girl, because you ain't getting out of here without, you got to give us that 100.
I started way back in my 20s and back in 2003, 2004. And I started just buying a multifamily. That's how I started. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know anything about multifamilies. I had a realtor who was not operating in my best interest. I didn't have a guide. I didn't have a mentor. I had a family member kind of introduce me to it, but they were hands off. So I had these big dreams of being like this real estate investor. And I was going to make all this money. So I bought this multifamily and it was a disaster. I lost over $20,000 to $25,000 on that first. I know.
You got to say that again. Hold on now. You can't just skip past that.
$20,000 to $25,000 because I thought I was going to go in and like fix it up and it was going to be this great place to live. And it didn't happen like that. I didn't have the proper structures in place. I didn't have the proper team. I wasn't very good at managing people. I wasn't good at managing myself. I just didn't know that you have to run it like a business. I thought I could just say, okay, contractor, fix the kitchen, and then it'd be done. Yeah. And that's not how it works, But I didn't know that. I just didn't have, like I said, the proper guidance in place. So I ended up selling that building a year later at a loss. And everything about it was wrong. It was 100% not in alignment with any of my goals, not my financial goals, where I wanted to live. It was on one side of town. All my friends, my gym, my family, everything was on a totally different side of town. At the time, I was like working a lot. I had to fly back and forth because I was working for like a big 5 consulting firm. It was just a lot. And so I ended up losing money when I sold the deal. Well, I when you're young, you're very resilient. So I was like, that's not going to stop me. I'll just buy another one. And so that's what I did. But this time I had a much better action plan. So I bought a condominium that the original owner had turned into a 1-bedroom, but it was a 2-bedroom, but he turned it into a 1-bedroom. So I ended up getting a home buyer loan. Okay. And I was able to put down very little money, which worked out perfectly. And then because the unit needed work, I did the work this time properly. Like I put the proper second bedroom up. I did work and I instantly had value. And once I was able to do that, I was able to do more advanced strategies like taking equity from it and just doing more stuff. Well, at this time I had bought, I became a real estate agent and I had an office.
You're playing both sides. I like that.
So I started flipping. So at that time I started flipping. I got with a partner and my partner had much better credit than me. So my partner was the credit partner and I was the time partner. And we flipped and we made a lot of money, just flip. This was at the height of it when it was just super easy to flip. It was easy to find property, easy to get money. Everything was easy. And we were flipping. And then I started buying property and I started holding it and I had tenants and everything was going great. But I was young and I didn't know anything about market cycles. So I was like, this is going to go on forever. I'm going to be rich. Finally.
That's where all those butts come in, because you said that but. when anybody ever says, "Oh, but," I'm like, I'm pausing. I'm like, "Uh-oh, here it come now."
It's happening. My plan is working. I was so excited. And then right around 2008, I think it was the end of 08, it may have been the end of 07, we started noticing suddenly the properties weren't selling as fast.
Mm.
Like, what's going on? What's going on? I didn't know anything about crashes and real estate cycles. I'm like, what the heck is this? I didn't know. So thankfully, we managed to sell the last property just before everything literally like crashed. So I came out almost unscathed. But because I wasn't a good money manager, I had no money, I had no property, I had sold everything.
Right.
So I had nothing, you know, like literally I had nothing. I had no job because by that time I was a full-time agent. And I also didn't know anything about being super resilient and just my own power and about pivoting. So had I pivoted in the proper way, I could have turned that into like a major opportunity.
Yeah.
But I just wasn't aware. And like I said, I didn't have any guidance. I was just young and on fire and just like doing my thing.
You had the dream, but then that energy, but just not all the direction and all those other little pieces that fall into place.
And no mentor to say, hey, this is the time to make it happen. And
so let me paint a picture here for the folks listening, because they're listening right now. And this does have a happy ending, y'all. Hold on now. Yeah, they probably listening like, oh my God. So this does have a happy ending. So we're gonna get to that part, but go ahead and keep talking. I just had to
just
tune in.
You slipping, Ephraim, slipping. So anyway, yeah, so everything crashed. I didn't know what I was gonna do. I ended up taking a personality test, and I ended up going back to school based on the personality test, and I got my master's. So now I work in the medical field as an occupational therapist, and I've been doing that since that time. And that actually turned out to be such a blessing and one of the best things ever, even though that time was very dark. Like I was driving this Lexus, I had to sell my car, I was going out to eat every day. I didn't even cook. Okay, I just went out because I had money. So I went out to eat every day. I never cooked. But what's interesting was that I was in the best shape of my life. I got up every morning, I went to the gym, I was slim and fit, I had six-pack abs, like everything was perfect. And then the market crashed. And then it's like, well, now what do I do? Well, now what, you know? So anyway, I go back to school, I get this degree. By this time, I hated real estate. I was like, I hate it. I'm never going back. This is stupid. All these people making money, they're liars. It was just, it was horrible. I hated real estate. And I was like, I am never doing that again. I'm just going to work my 40 years and retire at 65. And that's just going to be the end of it.
Yeah.
But I have an entrepreneurial spirit. And I also, one of my values is freedom. Okay. Freedom is really important to me. And another one of my values is free time. And so over the years, what I've learned is that health is my highest value. Free time is my free time, is my second value. And then freedom is my third value.
Wow.
And so real estate, I had all that when I had my office. I had freedom, I had free time, I had health, I had money, I had everything. So I was like, okay, let me try this again, but I'm going to do it differently this time.
Right.
Okay? So I still had that condo. I started renting out a room and just collecting money from that. And that was pretty much paying like the majority of my bills. And I was like, this is great. All I'm doing is renting out a room. You know what I mean?
That spark started kind of coming back then.
Yes, it was amazing. So I saved the money. I did what I had to do. I moved out. I bought a house. Okay. And I used a similar program to what I used to get into condominium. So I didn't have to put down a lot of money. And so I had the house for like a year and I fixed it up. Okay. I fixed it up. I did what I had to do. I did things a little bit differently.
So you kind of did some house hacking kind of.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah. For those listening, she's kind of getting into house hacking, which she, like I said, she didn't know it, but she coming back and we're going to get into these specifics about these different strategies and the pros and cons and all that. But she doesn't know it yet, but she coming back. Don't worry. I got you.
Thank you. Yeah. I didn't know at the time that was what it was called. I just was buying a house and I was like, I'm going to, you have to live in it for a year and all that stuff. And I just fixed it up over time. And then I moved out and I ended up putting a tenant in that. I was making $700 a month from that house. Okay.
Wow.
Yes, it was a lot of money and it was so good. So I started traveling because I had my regular job, I had the house and I started traveling and I had free time. So I had the house for a while and then I decided, okay, I'm ready to go bigger now. Like I'm ready to get another like multifamily. And so I was trying to get it with the house, but then I realized I wanted to go even bigger than what I thought and I needed a 20% down payment. So I ended up selling the house. I was going to put it on the market, and my tenant was like, "You're not selling my house. I'm going to buy it." And I was like, "What?" So we did like this whole, like rent to own thing that worked out really, really well. I sold her the house. Now I had all this money. Okay, so what do I do now? So I ended up taking this course that taught me all these strategies on how to buy big. And that's how I jumped from this single family house to this big commercial unit.
Yeah.
And so I went from a condominium and a house to 11 doors in less than 12 doors in less than 3 years. And so that's where I am now. And that has been such a journey, just learning. Because that
girl, you tired me out just hearing it.
I know. Yeah, it was like a really big journey, because I thought I was going to maybe buy like a duplex and then a triplex, but those two key decisions, house hacking, catapulted me into like just another category.
Right,
and so what's interesting was that the world opened. And so from there, I was able to travel even more, because remember, I told you my value was free time.
Free time, yeah.
Within that span, I had always traveled a little bit. Like out of college, I lived in Japan for a year as an English teacher. I had traveled here and there. But in that time span of just a few years, I went to over 80 countries.
Wow.
And I did all 7 continents, so including Antarctica, like all of them. I had money and I had time, and I was like, this is the power of real estate. When you have this income, you have the power to control and to direct your life.
Yeah. What you said is so valuable. I got to jump in. Anytime somebody drops little dimes and little gems like that, I can't just let that go, because I really want to make sure the listeners get this. You aligned your spending with your values, and you said, hey, what do I value in life? What do I value? I value time. I value freedom. I value the ability to travel and do these things. And you found a way to create the income that you need so that you can live out your values. And so many of us don't do that.
Yeah.
So many of us, we daydream and we dream about our values, but we don't put a plan in place to execute on those values. So that is so good. You're not just gonna come here and drop these gems. I gotta pick them up. My job is to mine them up. You drop them, I'll pick them up. But I want to go back to something you said earlier, which was also really good, because you talked about being out of the industry and hating it, like getting to a point where you're just frustrated with it and you hated it. And I really want to dive into that, because how did you find the spirit to get back in? Because most people, when they suffer a failure, like you said, you had a $25,000 loss and all these other things that happen. Most people, when they have a failure in business or investing, relationships, whatever, with God, whatever, anytime anybody experiences something other than their expectation, they don't tend to go back to it and give it that second go. So what was in it in you that said, I'm gonna give it a second go?
So I think there were 3 things. The first thing is that I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. Like I've always wanted to own something. For whatever reason in my head, that just sounded like freedom, just to own something. Okay, so that was the first thing. The second thing, in all honesty, I was just young and dumb. I don't have any other reason for it. I didn't know. When you don't know what you don't know, you take risks where people who know things wouldn't do. I had this, what do they call it? Dunning-Kruger effect. That's what it's called. Where people shouldn't be doing things, do things, and somehow end up successful. And the people who really should be doing things don't do things. Right. That's what it was. I didn't know that I couldn't. So I was just like, I'm just gonna try it out. And then the third thing, I can't even remember what the third reason was. But anyway, it was just let me just try this again. And I think I don't gamble, but I think I have a little bit of a gambling spirit. I've been at the casino and all that, and I hate it. Like I know it's not for me.
Yeah.
But with risking this kind of money, and I just kind of felt like I could do it. And I'm not really sure why. I just kind of felt like, let me just try it again.
And that's so good, man, because, and I won't say you have a gambling spirit. I'll say you have a spirit of a strategic risk.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
I like to say that, because there's a lot of people that are entrepreneurs that have an entrepreneurial spirit, and they like taking risks. And that is a godly trait as well, because if just to tell people that if you go back to the story of the servant with the talents, and you see that he gave a talent to each servant and said, go do X with it. and some people did some things and multiplied it, and some people did some things that didn't, and one person didn't do nothing because they didn't want to take any risk. But here's the thing, it didn't change the master's perspective. He still expected a return. He expected them to take a little bit of risk in order to accomplish the return. So I think sometimes people, especially people of faith, and some people assume that risk is bad, but strategic risk is good. But I want to go back to something else you said that was good. You said you didn't know that you couldn't fail or couldn't do it. You said you didn't know what you didn't know, and because you were young.
And yeah, you're talking about the first time or after the crash?
That afterwards, after the crash. Yeah, afterwards. Like how did you decide? Because most people, when you lose, you're not going to go back into it. But you said something that really stuck with me, and that I think that sometimes as we get older, right? It's sometimes harder to go back in and try a second time, because you said you were younger.
Yeah, that's one of the curses. I think that was the third thing that you just reminded me, is part of the blessing of being young is that, and I'm still young, just for the record.
Oh yeah, you better speak. We got to be about the same age, so you better speak it, girl.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I always tell people I'm young, spunky, and spry, and I'm gonna be that way until I die. Okay,
that's how.
Right. All right.
So if I put that on a T-shirt, don't try to come after me now.
We got it on camera, young, spunky, and spry till I die.
Okay. All right.
So, but one of the beauty of youth is that you are resilient. Like, you just look at young people and how they operate in their 20s. They very rarely have a failure and then they're like, well, that's the end of that. I'm never going to do that again. But you see that with people, particularly over the age of 45-ish or so. They fail, and then it ruins them. Like, they kill themselves, they go into funk, they can't. That just really doesn't happen to young people. They fail and they think they have a better idea of failure. It's more like, well, I tried that and it didn't work. That's how you should be thinking about it. Or the way that I'm learning to adapt now is, well, I tried that, and instead of saying it didn't work, okay, well, this is feedback. Now I know that's not the way that I want to do it. So I'm going to have to try something differently. And I'm trying to reprogram my mind even now, because I can tell with each year, I do actually become more fearful. And it does take a little more, internal conversations to do things that scare me. Like, even starting my business, that was super scary. And that just happened as a fluke. I wasn't trying to start like a real estate business. I wasn't trying to teach people how to do things. I just wanted real estate so that I could travel. And I just started teaching.
It morphed into something else.
They asked me, right. So these two things, I just, I found that I could travel and I wanted more money to travel. And then I started teaching people because they were asking. That was really, that was really it.
Yeah, and that's so good, and just to encourage all the older generation out here too, they might be watching and listen, you can still jump in, but what I think the key thing to understand, whether it's real estate, investing, because I always tell people there's 3 pillars to get real wealth. You have to either do real estate, you got to do some type of investing, or you got to do something with business, regardless of what sector it is and all that stuff. You got to do something with one of those 3 things. So if you have not done something in one of those areas, the hard reality that some people don't want to face is then you probably will not have the level of wealth that you truly aspire to. But it's still time. You can jump in and learn how to take strategic risks, but it just starts with educating yourself, right? So I want to jump into a couple of specifics, because I know people love specifics here with you. You talked about some of the things that you didn't have going into the business that you just didn't know, right? You said you didn't know what you didn't know, and that's part of the reason that you failed. So talk to me about some of the things that you learned, like, oh man, I need this. Like, you already mentioned a couple of them, like team and all these different things. So I just want to emphasize that a little bit more. So when you say team, like, oh, you should have a team when you're doing real estate, what kind of team should people have? What do they need?
So in my program, I teach that you need 9 team members. Okay. And 3 of them, I'm going to tell you three of them now that are just pretty essential. When you're new, once you kind of become more experienced, then some of these people you don't need as much anymore. But when you're new, I recommend a real estate agent for guidance. Okay. Some experience, you don't need them as much, but in the beginning, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to fill out contracts. You don't know questions to ask. You don't know how to look. You don't really know much of anything. So the agent is there to guide you. Okay. The second person that you need is an attorney, because you're dealing with contracts. That's what they do. They do contracts. You know what I mean? And so they're there to cover your, you know, just in case something happens. That's their job. Okay. I want to try to whistle it. Like they're there to cover your.
Right. They know what you're talking about.
All right, there you go. Woo-hoo, you know. Right. That's what they do. So I highly recommend an attorney. And then the third person, let me see. It kind of depends. I teach people buying undervalued property. Okay.
Mhm.
So I would recommend a handyman. If you're going to get into the real estate space, you need a handyman. You
Yeah.
need someone like in that space to assist you, unless you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. But some people don't want to buy undervalued property because they don't want to renovate and do all that kind of stuff. And then in that case, you know, fine, you don't need a handyman. You don't need a handyman. Probably I would replace that person with like a lender, because obviously you need the money. But when you get into the space of real estate, a handyman is essential because something is going to happen and you don't want to be scrambling to call somebody to help you. You need somebody on hand.
Can get it done. So no, that is good. That is good. It's one other thing you mentioned that you hit on that you thought was essential when you getting started. You talk about how you're learning to manage money and manage the business. I'm a financial guy, so I got to hit on that. So, because I think that is essential that people have their financial foundations in place, because that's going to help make this journey a lot smoother, right? Because for myself, I have my couple of rental properties that I have, but I still have my emergency money for myself and my family. And each of my properties, I have 3 months of emergency money set aside for each property in case something were to happen as well. So having that foundation and knowing how to budget, knowing how to control your spending, knowing how to do the numbers and things on a property to make sure it's a good investment is so key. So can you just hit on that just a little bit? I know I ain't gonna drain you dry today. I'll bring you back and drain. But just what are some key like money management things that you didn't know that you wish you would have known, so that at least the people listening, they could be like, okay, I got to go learn how to do XXX.
So what I've learned so I developed a 7-step process, but specifically for beginners. Okay. So all investors, when they're buying property, follow a 4-step process. Okay. So they find the property, they analyze it, they buy it, and then they rent it out to a tenant. Everybody does that. It's the same thing. But beginners need a little more help. Okay. With a 7-step process, and it's not to make the 4-step process more difficult. It's because you need those extra steps in order to get to where you're trying to go. Okay. And so I coined the phrase money triggering labor, which is money, team, leads, analyze, buy, repair, and rent. All right. And of that, I found that newbies struggle with getting the money, analyzing the deal, finding the deal, and renting. And all of those are related to money. Okay. All of those. And if you don't get the money right, you're going to fail. So in a nutshell, when it comes to managing money, you have income, you have expenses, and you have cash flow. And cash flow is the name of the game, because cash flow is the money that you get to keep for yourself and go on vacations, take care of
go to those 80 countries that you've been to.
Right, exactly. Get your hair done, your nails, everything you want to do, or just look at your money in the bank and just say, thank you, God, just smile, whatever it is. Cash flow is the name of the game. What I've noticed is people look at the income, which is the rent, and they look at the expenses, mortgage, taxes, and insurance, and they say, oh, the rent's $1,000, mortgage, taxes, and insurance is $500. I've got $500, and then they feel like they won the lottery. And that's what I did in the beginning. Then you don't realize, okay, I live in Chicago. Who's going to shovel the snow? Am I going to shovel the snow, or am I going to shovel the snow? In the summer, who's going to mow the lawn? Who's going to clean out the gutters? Guess what? We need water. Who's going to pay for that? This electricity we got going on, somebody's got to pay for that. And then the heat. I have the heat in my unit. I have the communal heat that goes to the building. If there's like a boiler, or you're paying for the heat or something like that. What if something breaks? My tenant calls their sink is clogged. Then what? You know what I mean? So you've got repairs, maintenance. Somebody's got to take out the trash, because in Chicago, trash pickup up to 4 units is free. Once you get beyond that, you have to pay for that. Who's going to pay for that?
So all these other little small things that people don't think about, that slowly whittles away your bottom line.
So I had $500, and I'm like, yeah, I got $500, but that I didn't take into account. So on gutter, the sink got clogged, the neighbor's kid broke the window, whatever it is. So you have to have like this extra pot, okay, of reserve money. And people don't know how to do the math. That's how, one of the reasons why I lost the first time. People don't know how to do the math to save for that. They just wait for something to happen. And then they're like, well, I spent all the money. Well, now what? Like now what? That's not going to work.
I am so glad I got you here to reinforce that, because I've been preaching this for like 18 years. I've been in the industry, and like at least 12 of those years, 12 to 13 of those years, I've been teaching personal finance. So for y'all listening, for y'all watching, now you know it's not just me saying this. So thank you for being my go-to here for helping to.
Don't worry about it.
Right. Well, I'll give you some of the t-shirt sales I'm going to make from the new slogan I just got. It's one other thing I want to touch on. I think those were two really good things, and I hope people listening really take those away, as far as making sure you got the right team, making sure you get your money right. And that's part of the reasons, if you're listening to me, well, I have these groups and all these different things I do and classes where I teach people about that money and those things that you need to do. So then you can do one of those three pillars. So you can do the business, you can do the real estate, you can do the investing, all those other things. One other thing I want to touch on before we kind of close up shop here, is your experience, in the industry and getting into this and what you've been doing as a woman and as a woman of color. Just how has that been going into this, as a woman of color? And I'm sure you face some opposition from contractors, maybe looking at you weird, or all those things that comes with those beautiful monikers that are attached to you. So if you can real briefly just kind of give us, and we'll have you back, because I know that's something that's hard to talk about briefly, but we'll definitely dive into that. But I just want you to just kind of go into that just a little bit.
Yeah, I know you and I were talking about that, about me developing a course for women, and I've been really thinking about that. In my 20s, I got bullied a lot by men. I guess it would be more like harassment and victimized, and they were kind of using their masculinity to force me to do, not sexual things, but you know, you're going to do it this way, your idea is wrong, you don't know what you're talking about, ignoring me, like I didn't have value. Okay. Right. Now that I'm a more mature woman, those things still happen. They just happen differently because my voice is now different. But men still, it still happens. They still do it. What I've noticed is it's actually more men of a certain age, because I have young men on my team who do things for me too. With them, it's not a big deal. And probably because they probably see me as an elder now. I'm not sure. Or maybe just the way they think is different, this new generation. Right. But men, for sure, they still have ways of talking down to me, asking me, are you sure you want to do that? Maybe that's not the right decision. Or they tell me what to do. You shouldn't do that. You should do this. And I know it's because I'm a woman, because I've had instances where I've had men there and they think the man is the owner. But people just defer to the man as the owner. And color makes a big difference too. People think the white man is the owner. And I'm like, I'm paying him. What are you talking to him for? Even some of my tenants who look like me do the same thing. Yeah,
I've had similar experiences. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I've had tenants tell me it's impossible for me to own the building. You look like me. You don't own the building. That's not possible. I've had seniors tell me, I had an inspector come to the building, and one of the senior tenants told me, bring the owner back. I need to talk to him. I'm the owner, right. But she thinks he's the owner. I'm the owner. Right. But what I've learned, I developed a brand new strategy that has worked well for me, where I've removed myself from that role, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. So now I don't have those problems as much, but I do have them with the vendors sometimes, the older male vendor. And older is not really that old. Like I said, it's like 40 to 45 plus. It's not old at all. It's just of a certain age. And that is something as a woman that you will have to deal with. But a lot of times, the only thing that matters is how you respond to it. And like I said, as a more mature woman, I respond to it differently.
That's so good. Wow, that's so good. And we're going to have to unpack that more at a later date. Because I want to make sure people are aware of these things, because as you're going into the industry, because there's all the stuff you got to do that everybody else got to do. And then there's a little bit more that people that are slightly or been disenfranchised have to do on top of what everybody else has to do as well. So I want to make sure people are aware of that. But man, this has been good. I've enjoyed our conversation. This has been amazing. I want to be mindful of your time, and I know you're busy. You probably got some more deals and t-shirts to go, low slogans to work on. So I just want to talk real quick about just my key takeaways from our conversation today. And then I'd like for you maybe share your one or two key takeaways. You know, my key takeaway really is one part of what you just said, that conversation about knowing your own value, knowing your own worth, learning to listen and trust your voice is key of what I heard there. Another key takeaway is get your team, learn how to manage your money properly, and learn the steps to get into this business. Don't just rush in without a plan. And once again, I'm going to have you back. I got to have you back to give people more specifics of that plan. But that's kind of my key takeaways for today. What are some key takeaways you have?
You know, what I want to share with people in general are two things that I've learned in this journey from my second time on. Mm-hmm. And that is planning long-term and the power of the mind. And those, I think that's really what makes anybody, you know, successful. You need to have some sort of a plan. It probably won't go the way that you expect it to go, but don't just jump into things. Have some sort of a plan and then kind of stick with it. And I think that our community needs to do a little bit better with long-term planning instead of living in the moment. And part of the planning is self-discipline. And that's what I'm learning now. That's how I was able to jump, because I had a lot more discipline the second time around. And then the second thing is power. And by power, I mean power of your mind. And so what I'm learning even still now when I run into problems, because it's not always a walk in the park, is I can solve anything. And as long as I get out of that problem and I think of myself like, I've done this, I tell myself, I've done all these amazing things. I can do this. I can solve this. God is going to send me this answer. That's all in your mind. All the problems we have are all in our mind anyway. You know what I mean? Half of them is just stuff we just make up because we've got food, shelter, clothing, you know, family, friends. We've got the basics. All this other stuff are first world problems that we just make up. But when you think of yourself as powerful, half of these things don't seem as big as you think that they are. And I'm learning that even more, like I said, with just maturity. And I'm learning to just kind of let some things just fall off my back and solve problems. And that's how I found that company to help me buy those buildings. The strategy that I use to buy those buildings is like unheard of. And people told me it couldn't be done. And I was like, I'm going to find somebody to do it. And I did.
Amen.
I did.
That's so amazing. Thank you so much. That was just a power. And you dropped a bunch more gems. I'm not going to pick them up because we're going to keep this conversation. I'll leave those gems for another time. But this has been amazing. Thank you so much, Kim. Tell everybody how they can get in contact with you. She has an amazing group, by the way, people. Definitely go and hook up with her group. She drops all kind of gems about real estate in that group. So definitely do that and just give them some more information. How can they connect with you? A website, social media, all that good stuff.
I'm on Facebook as Kimberly Land, Land. The name of my group is How to Buy Your First Rental Property. That's the Facebook group. And then you can find me online. My website is yourfirstrentalproperty.com, yourfirstrentalproperty.com. I'd love to help you buy your first rental property with my 7-step program. Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much. Hey, and thank you for listening, for watching, for tuning into this episode of the Wealth Exchange. Always remember, who the sun sets free is free indeed. Break every chain that binds you. Get free. I'll catch you next time.